Hello, welcome to the Drowsy Professor. As you settle in, let me know where in the world and at what time you're watching. Now, get comfortable, perhaps adjusting your pillow or pulling a soft blanket closer. Take a slow, deep breath and let yourself sink into this moment of quiet learning. Tonight, we're going to spend some peaceful time together in one of Earth's most fascinating periods, the Age of Dinosaurs. We'll experience a single, tranquil day in their world, observing these magnificent creatures as they go about their daily lives in the warm, ancient landscapes they called home. So close your eyes if you'd like, and let's begin our gentle journey back through time, to a day when giants walked the earth with quiet grace. The first hint of dawn arrives not with dramatic fanfare, but with the softest whisper of light along the eastern horizon of an ancient world, where the sky slowly transitions from deep velvet darkness to the pale, silvery gray that signals the beginning of another peaceful day in the Cretaceous period. This is a world transformed by warmth and abundant life, where the air itself seems to hum with the quiet energy of a planet at its most fertile and productive. The temperature, even in these early morning hours, rests at a comfortable 22 degrees Celsius, carrying with it the gentle humidity of a greenhouse world where ice caps are but a distant future and the poles themselves are crowned with temperate forests rather than frozen wastelands. Picture yourself standing on a low hill overlooking a vast floodplain that stretches to the horizon, its surface dotted with meandering rivers that catch and reflect the growing light like ribbons of liquid silver. The landscape before you is painted in shades of green that would seem almost impossibly lush by modern standards, as ferns the size of small trees create a living carpet beneath towering conifers and the first flowering plants, which have only recently begun their evolutionary journey toward the incredible diversity they will one day achieve. The air carries the rich, earthy scent of vegetation and moisture, mixed with the subtle perfume of primitive flowers that release their fragrance into the warming atmosphere. As the light continues to strengthen with the patient persistence of dawn, the first gentle movements begin to stir throughout this prehistoric paradise. In the distance, perhaps 2 kilometers away near the bend of a meandering river, the enormous silhouette of a Brontosaurus begins to shift and sway as this gentle giant prepares to greet another day. The creature's movements are deliberate and unhurried, each motion flowing into the next with the fluid grace of an animal that has no predators capable of threatening its massive bulk, no urgent schedule to maintain, and no purpose beyond the simple, peaceful existence of eating, drinking, and moving slowly through its verdant world. The Brontosaurus raises its incredibly long neck with the same unhurried patience that characterizes all its movements, lifting its small head nearly 20 meters above the ground to survey the morning landscape with dark, intelligent eyes that reflect the growing light. There is no alarm in its posture, no tension in its massive frame, only the calm awareness of a creature perfectly adapted to its environment and secure in its place within the natural order. The soft sound of its breathing carries across the still morning air, a rhythmic whooshing that speaks of lungs the size of small rooms drawing in the oxygen-rich atmosphere of this ancient world. Other shapes begin to emerge from the morning mist as the light grows stronger, revealing a landscape populated by creatures that would seem fantastic if not for the patient, ordinary nature of their daily activities. A small herd of Triceratops, though calling them small requires some perspective, as each individual weighs as much as a modern elephant, grazes peacefully among a grove of ferns about a kilometer to the south. Their massive heads, crowned with the distinctive 3-horned skulls that give them their name, move back and forth with the steady rhythm of efficient feeding machines, their powerful beaks stripping fronds from the ferns with practiced ease. The sounds of this awakening world are subtle and peaceful, quite different from what one might expect in a land of giants. The soft rustling of vegetation as enormous animals move through it creates a gentle background whisper, punctuated occasionally by the low, rumbling calls that these creatures use to maintain contact with their companions across the vast distances of their territories. These calls are not roars or bellows, but rather deep. Musical tones that travel through the dense air like the songs of whales, carrying information about location, contentment, and the simple social bonds that connect these ancient communities. A gentle breeze begins to stir as the sun climbs higher, carrying with it the complex perfume of a world where flowering plants are just beginning to explore the possibilities of attracting pollinators. The scent is unlike anything in the modern world. A mixture of primitive magnolia-like blooms, the green sweetness of abundant ferns, and the rich, loamy smell of soil that has never known the touch of grass, which has not yet evolved to carpet the Earth's landscapes. This is the smell of a world in transition, where ancient plant families still dominate while newer evolutionary experiments are just beginning to establish their presence. As you breathe in this ancient air, you notice how it seems to carry more weight than modern atmosphere, thick with moisture and oxygen levels that are significantly higher than those of today's world. This oxygen-rich environment is part of what allows creatures of such incredible size to thrive, providing the metabolic support necessary for animals that dwarf even the largest modern land mammals. The extra oxygen creates a subtle sense of invigoration, as if every breath provides more energy than expected, contributing to the overall sense of vitality and abundance that characterizes this prehistoric paradise. The warming air begins to carry the first thermals of the day, invisible columns of rising warm air that will soon be utilized by the flying reptiles that share this ancient world with their terrestrial cousins. Though the pterosaurs are not yet active in these early morning hours, their presence is felt in the occasional glimpse of a roosting spot high on a cliff face or in the crown of a particularly tall conifer, where these remarkable creatures wait for the thermal conditions that will allow them to take to the skies with minimal energy expenditure. The plant life of this Cretaceous morning reveals itself in increasing detail as the light strengthens and your eyes adjust to the unique character of this ancient landscape. The trees are familiar yet alien, conifers that would not look entirely out of place in a modern forest, yet subtly different in their proportions and the way they interact with their environment. Beneath them, a rich understory of ferns creates multiple layers of green, from tiny species that carpet the forest floor to massive tree ferns whose fronds arch gracefully overhead like natural umbrellas. Among these more familiar plants, the early flowering species stand out like jewels scattered throughout the green tapestry. These primitive angiosperms, the ancestors of all modern flowering plants, are still experimenting with the strategies that will eventually make them the dominant plant group on Earth. Their flowers are simple by modern standards, often small and inconspicuous, yet they represent one of evolution's most significant innovations, the beginning of a partnership between plants and animals that will reshape the entire character of terrestrial ecosystems. The dinosaurs that are beginning to stir in this dawn light show no awareness of the revolutionary changes taking place in the plant kingdom around them. To these ancient animals, the gradual increase in flowering plants is simply part of the normal variability of their environment, no more significant than the seasonal changes in temperature and precipitation that they have adapted to over millions of years of evolution. They continue their patient morning routines, focused on the immediate needs of finding food, water, and comfortable resting spots in which to spend the warming day ahead. A family group of Parasaurolophus emerges from a grove of tree ferns near the riverbank, their distinctive crested heads bobbing gently as they walk with the measured gait of animals that have nowhere urgent to go and all day to get there. These duck-billed dinosaurs move with a grace that seems almost choreographed, their movements synchronized by millions of years of social evolution that has taught them to function as a cohesive unit while remaining alert to the subtle environmental cues that guide their daily activities. The crests that crown their heads serve as natural resonating chambers, allowing these creatures to produce the haunting musical calls that serve as their primary means of long-distance communication. As the morning progresses and the herd spreads out to forage, they will use these calls to maintain contact with one another, creating a natural symphony that adds to the peaceful soundtrack of this ancient world. For now, in the quiet of early morning, They move in comfortable silence, their attention focused on the gradual process of waking up and preparing for another day of gentle survival in their prehistoric paradise. The river that meanders through this landscape reflects the growing light like a mirror, its surface disturbed only by the occasional gentle ripple as a dinosaur bends to drink or as an early rising pterosaur skims the surface in search of fish. The water itself is crystal clear, unpolluted by any industrial activity, and filtered naturally through vast wetlands and forests that stretch for thousands of kilometers in every direction. The banks of the river are lined with dense vegetation that extends right to the water's edge, creating a continuous corridor of green that provides habitat for countless species of smaller animals, from early mammals the size of modern shrews to the ancestors of modern birds that flit among the branches with quick, nervous energy. As the sun continues its patient climb above the horizon, the temperature begins to rise with the gentle predictability of a world where weather patterns are stable and extreme events are rare. The greenhouse climate of the Cretaceous ensures that even the highest latitudes experience subtropical conditions, and the absence of polar ice caps means that ocean currents flow freely around the globe, distributing heat with remarkable efficiency. This climatic stability is one of the factors that has allowed dinosaur communities to establish themselves across virtually every available habitat, from the steamy equatorial rainforests to the temperate woodlands that blanket the polar regions. The light itself has a different quality than that of the modern world, filtered through an atmosphere with a different chemical composition and often diffused by the higher humidity levels that characterize this greenhouse Earth. It creates a soft, golden illumination that seems to wrap around objects rather than casting the sharp shadows of a drier climate, giving the entire landscape a dreamlike quality that enhances the sense of peaceful timelessness that pervades this ancient morning. As the golden light of dawn continues to strengthen across the ancient landscape, the massive forms scattered throughout the river valley begin to show the first signs of their daily awakening, a process so gradual and gentle that it seems to unfold in harmony with the slow brightening of the prehistoric sky. The great herbivorous dinosaurs that dominate this Cretaceous world are creatures of such immense proportions that their every movement carries with it a sense of geological time, as if the Earth itself is slowly shifting and adjusting to accommodate beings that blur the line between animal and living landscape feature. The Brontosaurus that first caught your attention as dawn broke has now fully lifted its enormous head and begun the slow process of transitioning from rest to activity, a transformation that occurs with the unhurried patience of a creature that measures time not in minutes or hours, but in the gradual rhythm of seasons and years. Its massive body, easily 30 meters from nose to tail and weighing perhaps 40 tons, shifts position with movements so deliberate that each step seems to be carefully considered before being executed. The creature's small brain taking time to coordinate the complex muscular contractions required to move such an incredible bulk with grace and efficiency. Picture yourself moving closer to observe this gentle giant as it begins its day, maintaining a respectful distance that allows you to appreciate both the creature's enormous scale and the remarkably peaceful nature of its existence. The Brontosaurus extends its neck toward a cluster of tall conifers, its movements creating a soft whooshing sound as its body displaces the humid morning air. When it reaches the trees, the creature begins to feed with the methodical efficiency of a living harvesting machine, its peg-like teeth designed not for chewing, but for stripping foliage from branches, which it then swallows whole to be processed by the massive fermentation chambers that comprise much of its digestive system. The feeding process itself is a meditation in slow motion, each bite carefully selected and efficiently removed from the tree before the long neck swings gracefully to the next promising cluster of needles or leaves. There's no sense of urgency in these movements, no suggestion that the animal fears running out of food or time. Instead, there is only the calm assurance of a creature that exists in perfect harmony with an environment designed to support its massive caloric requirements through abundant, easily accessible vegetation that surrounds it in every direction. As you watch this prehistoric breakfast unfold, the soft sounds of other giants beginning their daily routines create a gentle symphony across the landscape. Perhaps a kilometer away, a small herd of Apatosaurus has begun to stir near the edge of a large wetland, their movements creating subtle waves that spread across the shallow water and catch the morning light in patterns of liquid gold. These creatures, slightly smaller than their Brontosaurus cousins, but still measuring over 20 meters in length, move through the marsh with surprising grace, their broad feet distributing their weight so effectively that they barely sink into the soft sediment despite their multi-ton bulk. The wetland environment provides these giants with access to different types of vegetation than their forest-dwelling relatives, including aquatic plants and soft shoots that grow in the nutrient-rich waters of this prehistoric marsh. As they feed, the Apatosaurus occasionally submerge their heads completely beneath the surface, a behavior that creates gentle splashing sounds and sends concentric rings spreading across the mirror-like water. Their long necks allow them to reach vegetation growing in deeper areas while keeping their massive bodies in the shallows, an adaptation that maximizes their feeding efficiency while minimizing energy expenditure. The social dynamics of these herds reveal themselves slowly as the animals become more active, displaying behaviors that suggest complex relationships built on millions of years of evolutionary refinement. The largest individuals, presumably the matriarchs of their respective groups, position themselves at the edges of the feeding areas where they can maintain awareness of potential threats, while the younger and smaller members focus their attention on the serious business of consuming the enormous quantities of plant matter required to fuel their rapid growth and development. Communication between these giants occurs primarily through low-frequency vocalizations that travel efficiently through both air and ground, creating a network of acoustic contact that spans vast distances. These calls are felt as much as heard, their deep, rumbling vibrations passing through the earth and up through your feet, creating a physical connection to these ancient conversations. The calls themselves are remarkably musical, with complex harmonic structures that suggest a sophisticated communication system capable of conveying detailed information about individual identity, emotional state, and social relationships. As the morning progresses and temperatures continue to rise, different species of herbivorous dinosaurs begin to emerge from their nighttime resting places throughout the valley, each group following behavioral patterns refined over millions of years of evolutionary development. A family of Triceratops appears on a distant hillside, their massive three-horned skulls catching the sunlight as they begin their daily migration from sleeping areas to feeding grounds. These heavily armored herbivores move with the confident bearing of animals that have little to fear from predators, their powerful builds and defensive weaponry making them formidable opponents even for the largest carnivorous dinosaurs. The Triceratops family demonstrates a different feeding strategy than the long-necked sauropods, their powerful beaks and specialized teeth designed for processing tougher vegetation, including the stems and roots of ferns and cycads. They move through the landscape like living bulldozers, their massive heads lowered to ground level as they systematically harvest plant material with the efficiency of creatures that have evolved specifically for this purpose. The sound of their feeding carries across the morning air as a rhythmic crunching and tearing, punctuated by the occasional deep breathing that indicates the considerable physical effort required to power their massive feeding apparatus. Between the various groups of giants, smaller herbivorous species add their own contributions to the awakening symphony of this ancient morning. Herds of Parasaurolophus move in graceful formations along well-worn paths that connect different feeding areas, their distinctive crested heads bobbing in unison as they walk with the measured gait of animals following routes established by countless generations of their ancestors. These duck-billed dinosaurs possess one of the most sophisticated communication systems in the prehistoric world, using their hollow crest to produce haunting musical calls that serve both to coordinate group movements and to maintain contact between individuals as they spread out to forage. The calls of the Parasaurolophus add a hauntingly beautiful element to the morning soundscape, their resonant tones carrying for kilometers across the valley and creating echoes that bounce off distant hills and forest walls. Each individual produces slightly different tones based on the size and shape of its crest, allowing herd members to recognize each other's voices across great distances and maintain the social bonds that are crucial for their survival in this ancient world. As you observe these magnificent creatures going about their morning routines, the sheer abundance of life becomes increasingly apparent. This is not a sparse landscape where animals struggle to find adequate resources, but rather a biological paradise where evolution has achieved a remarkable balance between the massive appetites of giant herbivores and the incredible productivity of Cretaceous plant communities. The warm, humid climate and elevated carbon dioxide levels create ideal conditions for plant growth, while the absence of grass allows forests and fern prairies to support biomass levels that would be impossible in modern ecosystems. The feeding behaviors you witness demonstrate the incredible efficiency with which these animals have learned to exploit their environment. Each species has evolved to specialize in different types of vegetation and different feeding heights, reducing competition while maximizing the utilization of available plant resources. The long-necked sauropods harvest high-growing foliage that is inaccessible to other herbivores, while ground-level feeders like Triceratops focus on different plant species and different parts of the same plants, creating a complex system of resource partitioning that allows multiple species of giants to coexist in the same general area. The warmth of the strengthening sun begins to affect the behavior of these massive animals in subtle but noticeable ways. As their body temperatures rise with the ambient air temperature, their movements become slightly more fluid and their feeding rates increase, demonstrating the ectothermic aspects of their physiology, while also suggesting the complex thermal regulation strategies that allow creatures of such enormous size to maintain optimal body temperatures in varying environmental conditions. Some individuals begin to seek out shaded areas beneath the largest trees, while others move toward water sources where they can cool themselves if necessary as the day progresses. The landscape itself seems designed to accommodate these giants, with trees spaced widely enough to allow the largest sauropods to move freely between them, and with natural clearings and meadows that provide open feeding areas for the more terrestrial species. The rivers and wetlands are shallow enough to be accessible to animals whose size would make deep water dangerous, yet extensive enough to provide abundant aquatic vegetation and fresh water for drinking. This is truly a world designed by and for giants, where every aspect of the environment has been shaped by millions of years of coevolution between massive animals and the plant communities that support them. As morning transitions toward midday, the gentle rhythms of prehistoric life continue to unfold with the predictable reliability of natural processes that have remained unchanged for millions of years. The great herbivores maintain their patient feeding, their massive forms creating a sense of permanence and stability that suggests a world in perfect balance, where the pressures of survival have been reduced to the simple, peaceful activities of eating, drinking, and moving slowly through a landscape that provides everything necessary for their continued existence. The social interactions between different species reveal themselves as remarkably peaceful, with various types of dinosaurs sharing feeding areas and water sources without apparent conflict or competition. A group of Parasaurolophus feeds quietly near a small herd of Triceratops, while in the distance, the long necks of several Brontosaurus can be seen moving slowly through a grove of conifers. These interactions suggest an ecosystem that has achieved remarkable stability, where the abundance of resources and the specialization of different species has eliminated most sources of competition and allowed for the coexistence of multiple giants in the same general habitat. The sounds of this prehistoric morning create a symphony unlike anything in the modern world, dominated by the deep breathing and low vocalizations of massive animals, the soft rustling of vegetation as tons of living dinosaurs move through the forest, and the gentle sounds of feeding as powerful jaws and specialized teeth process enormous quantities of plant material. It is a soundscape that speaks of abundance, stability, and the peaceful coexistence of creatures so large that they seem to belong more to geology than biology, yet so perfectly adapted to their environment that their every movement appears to be a natural expression of the landscape itself. As the morning sun climbs higher above the prehistoric horizon, casting longer rays through the towering canopy of this Cretaceous forest, the ancient woodland begins to reveal its most intimate secrets through a symphony of gentle sounds and subtle movements that speak to the incredible complexity of life thriving within these verdant cathedral spaces. The forest itself is a living entity of remarkable sophistication, composed of layer upon layer of vegetation that creates countless microhabitats and ecological niches, each supporting its own community of creatures that have evolved to exploit the specific conditions found at different heights and locations within this three-dimensional ecosystem. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a grove of massive conifers, their trunks rising like natural columns toward a canopy that stretches 40 meters above your head, creating a living roof that filters the warming sunlight into countless dancing beams of golden light. These trees are ancient by any standard, some individual specimens having stood in this same spot for centuries, their massive root systems extending deep into the rich soil and spreading outward for dozens of meters to anchor these forest giants against the occasional storms that sweep across this prehistoric landscape. The air within the forest carries a different quality than that of the open meadows and river valleys, cooler and more humid due to the transpiration of countless leaves and the shade provided by the multi-layered canopy above. This microclimate creates ideal conditions for a vast array of plant species that cannot survive in more exposed locations, including delicate ferns, primitive flowering plants, and countless species of mosses and fungi that carpet the forest floor in a living tapestry of green and brown that feels springy and soft beneath your feet. Among the towering trunks of the main canopy trees, smaller dinosaurs begin to reveal themselves as they go about their morning activities with the careful, deliberate movements of creatures that have evolved to thrive in this complex, three-dimensional environment. A small group of Hypsilophodon emerges from behind a massive tree fern, their bipedal forms moving with the quick, alert grace of animals that must remain constantly aware of their surroundings while navigating the obstacles and opportunities presented by dense forest habitat. These smaller dinosaurs, each about the size of a large modern deer, demonstrate feeding behaviors that are perfectly adapted to forest life, using their agile builds and sharp beaks to harvest specific types of vegetation that grow in the understory levels of the woodland. They move through the forest with remarkable stealth, their feet making almost no sound on the soft carpet of decomposing vegetation that covers the forest floor, and their mottled coloration helping them blend seamlessly with the dappled light and shadow patterns that characterize their arboreal home. The Hypsilophodon communicate with each other through a series of soft chirping calls that carry only short distances through the dense vegetation, a communication strategy that allows them to maintain contact with their group members while avoiding attracting the attention of larger animals that might view them as potential prey. Their calls are remarkably bird-like in character, though deeper and more resonant than those of any modern bird, creating a gentle background soundtrack that adds to the peaceful ambience of the forest environment. As you move deeper into the woodland, following what appears to be a natural path worn by countless generations of dinosaur feet, the diversity of plant life becomes increasingly apparent. The understory is dominated by tree ferns whose fronds arch gracefully overhead, creating a secondary canopy that provides additional layers of shade and shelter for the smaller creatures that call this forest home. These ancient plants, some specimens reaching heights of 15 meters or more, represent one of the most successful plant families of the Mesozoic era, their efficient design having remained virtually unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. Beneath the tree ferns, a rich community of smaller plants creates yet another layer of habitat complexity. Ground-level ferns carpet much of the available space, their fronds unfurling in the characteristic fiddlehead spirals that have been a signature of forest understories since the earliest days of terrestrial plant evolution. Among these familiar forms, small flowering plants add splashes of color to the predominantly green landscape. They're simple but beautiful blooms representing some of evolution's earliest experiments with the flower forms that will eventually diversify into the incredible variety of angiosperms that dominate modern ecosystems. The forest floor itself tells stories of the creatures that inhabit this woodland through the subtle signs they leave behind during their daily activities. Here and there, the soft earth shows the three-toed footprints of various small theropod dinosaurs, each track telling a story of hunting, foraging, or simply moving through the forest in pursuit of the daily necessities of survival. The prints are crisp and fresh, indicating that their makers passed this way only hours earlier, perhaps during the cooler pre-dawn hours when many forest creatures prefer to do their traveling. Scattered throughout the understory, partially hidden by ferns and fallen logs, small mammals begin to reveal themselves as they emerge from their nighttime hiding places to take advantage of the warming morning temperatures. These early mammalian species, most no larger than modern shrews or small rats, represent the ancestors of the group that will eventually inherit the Earth after the age of dinosaurs has passed. Though for now, they remain secretive and largely nocturnal creatures that occupy the small ecological niches left unoccupied by their giant reptilian contemporaries. The mammals move through the forest with quick, nervous energy, their small size making them vulnerable to a wide variety of predators, but also allowing them to exploit food sources and hiding places that are inaccessible to larger animals. They feed primarily on insects, seeds, and small fruits, their high metabolic rates requiring them to consume food almost constantly during their active periods. Despite their small size and apparently insignificant role in the ecosystem, these early mammals possess several advanced characteristics, including sophisticated sensory systems and parental care behaviors that will prove crucial for their long-term evolutionary success. The gentle murmur of flowing water creates a constant, soothing backdrop as we follow one of the countless streams that meander through this Cretaceous landscape, its crystal-clear waters reflecting the warming morning sky while providing essential resources for the diverse community of creatures that depend upon these aquatic arteries for their survival. These waterways are the lifeblood of the prehistoric world, carrying not only the precious water that sustains all life, but also nutrients, sediments, and even the seeds and spores that help to spread plant communities across the vast expanses of this ancient continent. Picture yourself standing beside a stream that winds lazily through a grove of tree ferns and early flowering plants, its banks lined with soft sediments that show the clear impressions of countless dinosaur tracks from previous visits to this vital water source. The stream itself is perhaps 10 meters wide and rarely more than a meter deep, its gentle current barely disturbing the sandy bottom as it flows toward its eventual destination in one of the larger rivers that drain this prehistoric landscape toward distant, warm seas. The water is remarkably pure by modern standards, having been filtered naturally through vast forests and wetlands that act as living water treatment systems, removing sediments and pollutants while adding beneficial minerals and nutrients that support aquatic life. The clarity of the water allows you to see clearly to the bottom, where primitive freshwater mollusks move slowly across the sandy substrate, and early freshwater fish dart between submerged logs and clusters of aquatic vegetation. As the morning sun climbs higher and begins to warm the surrounding landscape, the first visitors of the day begin to appear along the stream banks, drawn by their essential need for fresh water and the cooling effects of the aquatic environment. A small family group of Parasaurolophus emerges from the adjacent woodland, their distinctive crested heads bobbing gently as they approach the water's edge with the cautious awareness of animals that understand the importance of maintaining vigilance even during essential activities like drinking. The lead animal, presumably the matriarch of the small herd, extends her neck toward the water while keeping her head raised enough to maintain visual contact with the surrounding area. Her companions arrange themselves in a loose semicircle behind her, creating a formation that allows multiple individuals to drink simultaneously while ensuring that at least one member of the group is always in position to detect potential threats. This behavioral pattern has been refined over millions of years of evolution and represents the collective wisdom of countless generations of duck-billed dinosaurs that have successfully navigated the challenges of survival in a world where even peaceful activities carry inherent risks. The drinking process itself is remarkably graceful, with each animal lowering its head to the water surface and using its specialized bill to scoop up quantities of the clear liquid with practiced efficiency. The sounds of their drinking carry across the morning air as gentle splashing and soft gurgling, punctuated occasionally by the satisfied sighs that indicate the pleasure these creatures derive from access to cool, fresh water after a morning of feeding on vegetation that, while nutritious, provides relatively little moisture content. As the Parasaurolophus family continues its morning hydration ritual, other creatures begin to appear along different sections of the stream, each species demonstrating its own unique adaptations for aquatic access and its own particular behavioral patterns for safely utilizing this essential resource. Perhaps 50 meters upstream, a lone Triceratops approaches the water with the confident bearing of an animal whose size and defensive capabilities make it largely immune to predation, yet which still maintains the instinctive caution that characterizes all successful herbivores. The massive three-horned dinosaur wades directly into the shallow water, its broad feet displacing significant quantities of the clear liquid as it moves to a position where the stream depth allows comfortable drinking without the need to lower its heavily armored head to an awkward or vulnerable position. The Triceratops drinks with the methodical efficiency of a living water pump, its powerful throat muscles working rhythmically to process the large quantities of liquid required to maintain its massive bulk in the warming temperatures of the Cretaceous morning. The presence of these large herbivores near the water attracts the attention of smaller creatures that have learned to take advantage of the opportunities created by the activities of their giant neighbors. Small early birds flutter among the reeds and low vegetation that line the stream banks, picking up insects that have been disturbed by the movements of the larger animals, while tiny mammals dart between the feet of the drinking dinosaurs to access water sources that might otherwise be too exposed for creatures of their vulnerable size. The aquatic environment itself teems with life forms that have adapted specifically to freshwater habitats during this period of Earth's history. Primitive freshwater fish, ancestors of many modern lineages, move in loose schools through the deeper pools created by natural bends in the stream course. These early fish demonstrate feeding behaviors that are remarkably similar to those of their modern descendants, picking up organic matter from the stream bottom, capturing insects that fall into the water from overhanging vegetation, and occasionally rising to the surface to take advantage of the abundant insect life that hovers just above the water surface. Freshwater mollusks, including early ancestors of modern mussels and snails, filter nutrients from the water column while helping to maintain the clarity and quality of the aquatic environment through their feeding activities. These creatures represent some of the earliest experiments in freshwater adaptation, their shells and soft bodies perfectly designed for life in the gentle currents and variable conditions of stream environments. The vegetation along the stream banks creates a unique ecological zone that combines the characteristics of both terrestrial and aquatic habitats, supporting plant species that require high moisture levels but cannot tolerate complete submersion. Primitive rushes and sedges line the immediate water's edge, their roots extending both into the saturated soils of the bank and into the shallow water itself, creating natural filtration systems that help to maintain water quality while providing habitat for countless small animals. As the morning progresses and temperatures continue to rise, the stream begins to serve not only as a water source, but also as a natural cooling system for the various creatures that visit its banks. Several small theropod dinosaurs appear in the distance, their bipedal forms moving with the alert, predatory grace that characterizes the carnivorous members of the dinosaur family tree. However, these particular individuals show no signs of hunting behavior, instead approaching the water with the same peaceful intent as the herbivorous species that have preceded them. The theropods wade into the shallower sections of the stream, using the cool water to regulate their body temperatures as the ambient air temperature rises with the climbing sun. Their behavior suggests that even the predators of this ancient world recognize the stream banks as neutral territory, places where the essential need for water and thermal regulation takes precedence over the normal dynamics of predator and prey relationships. This temporary truce around water sources reflects the abundance of resources that characterizes the Cretaceous world, where the availability of food is generally sufficient to reduce the predation pressure on herbivorous species and allow for more relaxed interactions between different members of the ecosystem. The stream serves as a natural community center where various species can coexist peacefully, bound together by their shared dependence on this vital resource. The sounds of the stream environment create their own unique symphony, dominated by the gentle gurgling of flowing water, but enriched by the calls and movements of the various creatures that visit the aquatic habitat throughout the morning hours. The musical calls of Parasaurolophus blend with the splashing sounds created by larger dinosaurs as they move through the water, while the background chorus of insects and early birds adds texture and complexity to the overall acoustic landscape. As you observe the various creatures utilizing the stream, the sophisticated social behaviors of many species become apparent through their interactions around this shared resource. Hierarchies based on size, age, and social status determine the order in which different individuals access the best drinking spots, while complex communication systems help to coordinate group activities and maintain the peaceful coexistence that characterizes these gatherings. The younger members of various herds and family groups demonstrate behaviors that clearly indicate learning processes in action as they observe and imitate the water access techniques employed by their elders, while gradually developing the skills and confidence necessary to approach and utilize aquatic resources independently. These observations provide fascinating insights into the intelligence and social complexity of dinosaur communities, revealing creatures that are far more sophisticated in their behaviors and relationships than early scientific theory suggested. The chemical composition of the stream water itself reflects the unique characteristics of the Cretaceous environment, with mineral content and pH levels that differ significantly from those of modern freshwater systems. The elevated carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere of this ancient world create slightly more acidic conditions in natural waters, while the absence of certain modern pollutants and the presence of different types of geological weathering produce a distinctive chemical signature that supports life forms adapted specifically to these conditions. Seasonal variations in stream flow and water level create dynamic conditions that add complexity and challenge to life in and around these aquatic environments. During periods of heavy rainfall, the streams can become rushing torrents that reshape their banks and create new channels, while extended dry periods can reduce flow to a mere trickle that concentrates both nutrients and wildlife into smaller areas where competition for resources becomes more intense. The vegetation that depends upon streamside conditions demonstrates remarkable adaptations for dealing with these variations in water availability, including specialized root systems that can access moisture at various depths and flexible growth patterns that allow rapid recovery from flood damage. These plants serve as crucial components of the stream ecosystem, providing food for herbivorous dinosaurs while also offering shelter and nesting sites for smaller animals. The stream's journey through the landscape connects diverse habitats and serves as a corridor for the movement of both nutrients and organisms between different areas of the prehistoric world. Seeds and spores travel downstream to establish new plant colonies in suitable locations, while mobile animals use the waterway as a natural highway that provides both direction and resources during their movements across the landscape. As the morning reaches its peak and the sun climbs toward its zenith, the stream continues to serve as a focal point for community activity, its banks busy with the comings and goings of creatures large and small as they pursue their daily routines of survival and social interaction. The peaceful coexistence around this vital resource demonstrates the fundamental importance of water in creating and maintaining the complex communities that characterize life in the Cretaceous world. The gentle flow of the ancient stream carries with it not only water and sediments, but also the essence of life itself, connecting all the creatures that depend upon its resources in an intricate web of relationships that has evolved over millions of years of shared existence in this prehistoric paradise. The soft murmur of its passage serves as a constant reminder of the continuity and interconnectedness that characterizes all life on Earth, creating a soothing soundtrack for the peaceful daily activities of the magnificent creatures that call this ancient world their home. As the sun reaches its zenith in the clear Cretaceous sky, casting short shadows beneath the towering tree, ferns, and ancient conifers, a profound sense of peaceful lethargy begins to settle over the prehistoric landscape like a gentle blanket of warmth and contentment. The temperature has risen to a comfortable 30 degrees Celsius, creating ideal conditions for the cold-blooded giants that dominate this ancient world to slow their metabolisms and enter the drowsy state of midday rest that characterizes their daily rhythm during the warmest hours of each peaceful day. Picture the transformation that occurs across the valley as the various dinosaur communities respond to the increasing heat by seeking out the coolest, most comfortable locations available in their territory. The massive Brontosaurus that had been feeding actively during the cooler morning hours now moves with increasingly deliberate slowness toward a grove of particularly large conifers, where the dense canopy creates a natural pavilion of shade that offers relief from the direct rays of the midday sun. The great creature's movements become more and more languid as it approaches its chosen resting spot, each step requiring what seems like considerable thought and planning before execution. When it finally reaches the shade, the Brontosaurus settles its enormous bulk onto the soft carpet of fallen needles with a process so gradual that it resembles geological subsidence more than animal movement. The massive legs fold beneath the creature's body with surprising grace, and the long neck curves in a gentle S shape that allows the small head to rest comfortably while maintaining enough elevation to permit easy breathing and minimal awareness of the surrounding environment. The sounds that accompany this settling process are deeply satisfying in their peacefulness. The soft rustling of vegetation being compressed beneath tons of living dinosaur, the gentle sighs of satisfaction as the creature finds a comfortable position, and the rhythmic breathing that gradually slows to the deep, measured pace of an animal entering a state of profound relaxation. The breathing itself becomes a kind of natural metronome, marking time with the slow, steady rhythm of an organism perfectly synchronized with the thermal cycles of its environment. As you observe this magnificent display of prehistoric tranquility, other giants throughout the valley begin their own transitions into midday rest, each species demonstrating its own particular adaptations for dealing with the thermal challenges of the warming day. A family group of Triceratops has gathered beneath a cluster of tree ferns whose broad fronds create an effective natural umbrella. The adults are arranging themselves in a loose circle, with the younger members of the group positioned safely in the center, where they are protected from any potential threats by the formidable bulk and defensive weaponry of their elders. The Triceratops demonstrate a particularly endearing behavior as they settle into their resting positions, with several individuals actually leaning against each other for mutual support and comfort. Their massive heads, crowned with the distinctive three-horned skulls that give them their name, rest heavily on the soft ground, while their eyes drift half-closed in the drowsy contentment that comes with complete security and perfect comfort. The occasional gentle rumble of contentment passes between them, a low-frequency communication that serves to maintain social bonds while requiring minimal energy expenditure. The smaller herbivorous dinosaurs that share this landscape have developed their own strategies for midday rest that take advantage of their more modest size and greater agility. A herd of Parasaurolophus has found refuge in a natural depression near the stream, where the slightly cooler air and the sound of flowing water create an ideal environment for peaceful napping. They arrange themselves in a compact group with their distinctive crested heads pointing in different directions, ensuring that even in their drowsy state, they maintain some level of collective awareness of their surroundings. The duck-billed dinosaurs demonstrate remarkable synchronization in their rest behavior, with all members of the herd seeming to drift into sleep at approximately the same time, their breathing gradually slowing and deepening until it matches the peaceful rhythm established by the group as a whole. Occasionally, one individual will emit a soft, musical call that serves both to maintain contact with the group and to reassure the others that all remains well in their peaceful sanctuary. In the deeper shade of the forest, smaller dinosaurs and other creatures have found their own solutions to the challenge of midday heat. Several Hypsilophodon have climbed into the lower branches of a large tree fern, where they rest like oversized, prehistoric birds, their clawed feet gripping the sturdy fronds while their bodies remain perfectly balanced and motionless except for the gentle rise and fall of breathing. This arboreal resting strategy allows them to take advantage of the cooling effects of air circulation while positioning themselves safely above any ground-level threats that might appear during their vulnerable rest period. The early mammals that inhabit this ancient world have already retreated to their burrows and hiding places among the roots and fallen logs of the forest floor, where they will remain throughout the heat of the day before emerging again during the cooler evening hours. Their small size and high metabolic rates make them particularly vulnerable to thermal stress, so their strategy of complete avoidance of midday conditions represents an effective adaptation to the challenges of life in a world dominated by creatures whose size allows them to maintain stable body temperatures even during the warmest parts of the day. The insects that fill countless ecological niches throughout this prehistoric ecosystem have also responded to the rising temperatures by reducing their activity levels, though many species remain active in the shadier microclimates created by the vegetation and the bodies of the resting dinosaurs. The soft buzzing of beetles and the gentle hum of primitive flies create a subtle background soundtrack that adds to the drowsy atmosphere without being intrusive or alarming to the sleeping giants. Even the plant life of this ancient world seems to participate in the midday siesta, with many species showing subtle changes in posture and orientation as they respond to the increasing heat and light intensity. The fronds of tree ferns adjust their angles to minimize direct sun exposure, while the leaves of early flowering plants fold slightly to reduce their surface area and conserve moisture during the warmest part of the day. The quality of light during these midday hours takes on a special character as it filters through the various layers of vegetation and reflects off the bodies of the resting dinosaurs. The harsh brightness of direct sunlight is softened and diffused by the canopy, creating a gentle, golden illumination that enhances the peaceful atmosphere and contributes to the overall sense of drowsy contentment that pervades the landscape. The thermal dynamics of this resting period reveal the sophisticated physiological adaptations that allow these ancient creatures to thrive in their warm climate environment. The large thermal mass of the biggest dinosaurs means that their body temperatures change very slowly in response to environmental conditions, allowing them to maintain optimal metabolic function even as air temperatures fluctuate throughout the day. This thermal inertia is one of the key advantages of gigantism in a warm climate, providing stability and efficiency that smaller animals cannot achieve. The social aspects of midday resting behavior provide fascinating insights into the complex relationships that exist within dinosaur communities. Family groups maintain close physical contact during rest periods, with parents and offspring often touching or overlapping in their resting positions. These behaviors serve multiple functions, including thermoregulation, predator detection, and the maintenance of social bonds that are crucial for group cohesion and cooperative survival strategies. Communication during rest periods becomes more subtle, but no less important than during active periods, with various species employing soft vocalizations, gentle physical contact, and even chemical signals to maintain awareness of group status and individual well-being. The ability to rest peacefully while maintaining essential social connections represents a sophisticated balance between the need for energy conservation and the requirements of community living. The predatory dinosaurs that share this ecosystem have largely adopted similar resting strategies during the midday hours, recognizing that the reduced activity levels of their potential prey make hunting less productive while the elevated temperatures make high-energy activities like pursuit and capture more physiologically demanding. A large theropod can be glimpsed in the distance, resting in the shade of a rocky outcrop where the thermal properties of stone provide additional cooling benefits. The temporary reduction in predation pressure during midday rest periods creates opportunities for smaller, more vulnerable creatures to engage in activities that would be too risky during times of higher predator activity. Young dinosaurs take advantage of this relative safety to engage in play behaviors that help develop the skills and social relationships they will need as adults, while various species of small vertebrates venture briefly into more open areas to access resources that are normally too dangerous to approach. The hydrological cycle of this ancient world continues its patient work even during the drowsy midday hours, with moisture transpired by countless plants creating a subtle humidity that helps moderate temperatures and provides additional cooling through evaporation. The streams and rivers continue their gentle flow, creating moving air currents that carry cooling breezes to the creatures resting along their banks. As the sun reaches its absolute peak and begins the almost imperceptible process of starting its afternoon descent, the entire landscape seems to hold its breath in a moment of perfect stillness and contentment. This is the deep heart of the prehistoric day, when time seems to slow to match the breathing of sleeping giants and the very air shimmers with the heat and peace of a world in perfect harmony with its natural rhythms. The drowsiness that characterizes this period is not merely the result of thermal stress or metabolic slowdown, but represents a fundamental aspect of the daily rhythm that has evolved to maximize energy efficiency and survival success in a world where the abundance of resources allows for extended periods of rest and relaxation. This midday siesta is as much a part of dinosaur behavior as feeding and migration, an essential component of their survival strategy that has been refined over millions of years of evolutionary development. The peaceful scene that unfolds during these drowsy hours provides a window into a world where the pace of life is dictated not by artificial schedules or external pressures, but by the natural rhythms of sun and temperature, hunger and satiation, activity and rest. It is a reminder of how life can achieve perfect synchronization with environmental conditions when allowed to follow its own inherent wisdom and ancient patterns of adaptation. As the afternoon sun begins its gradual descent from its midday zenith, the comfortable warmth that had encouraged peaceful rest throughout the prehistoric landscape starts to moderate into the perfect temperature for renewed activity. The great herbivorous dinosaurs that had spent the drowsy midday hours in restful contentment beneath the shade of ancient conifers and tree ferns begin to stir with the unhurried grace that characterizes all their movements, their massive forms slowly transitioning from the deep relaxation of their thermal siesta to the gentle alertness required for the afternoon feeding session that will sustain them through the remainder of the day. Picture the magnificent Brontosaurus as it begins the gradual process of rising from its comfortable resting position beneath the grove of towering conifers. The awakening occurs in stages, each movement flowing into the next with the fluid deliberation of a creature whose size requires careful coordination and planning for even the simplest actions. First, the enormous head lifts slowly from its resting position, the long neck extending and curving as the animal surveys its surroundings with the calm awareness of a creature that has no natural enemies and all the time in the world to appreciate the peaceful beauty of its domain. The massive legs unfold beneath the creature's bulk with surprising grace, each movement accompanied by the soft sounds of vegetation being displaced and the gentle creaking of joints and muscles designed to support weights that challenge the very limits of what terrestrial life can achieve. As the Brontosaurus achieves its full standing height, its head swaying gently 20 meters above the ground, the afternoon light catches the subtle patterns and textures of its hide, revealing skin that appears almost leathery in its thickness, yet surprisingly supple in its ability to accommodate the complex movements required for such an enormous animal to function effectively in its environment. The transition from rest to feeding begins with a slow, contemplative survey of the available vegetation within reach of the creature's incredible neck. The Brontosaurus possesses one of evolution's most remarkable feeding adaptations, its serpentine neck allowing it to access food sources across a vast area without requiring the energy expenditure that would be necessary to move its massive body. This neck, supported by an intricate system of muscles, tendons, and specially adapted vertebrae, can sweep through a feeding arc that encompasses several acres of prime vegetation, making the animal a living, mobile harvesting machine of extraordinary efficiency. The feeding process itself unfolds with a meditative quality that reflects both the abundance of available food and the creature's complete confidence in its ability to meet its enormous nutritional requirements through the methodical consumption of the lush vegetation that surrounds it on all sides. The Brontosaurus extends its neck toward a cluster of particularly succulent tree fern fronds, its movements creating gentle whooshing sounds as the massive appendage displaces the humid afternoon air. When the small head reaches its target, the creature's specialized teeth, designed not for chewing but for efficient stripping and cropping, begin their work with the rhythmic precision of a biological machine perfectly adapted for its purpose. Each bite removes substantial quantities of plant material, which the Brontosaurus swallows whole to be processed by the massive fermentation chambers that comprise much of its digestive system. These internal processing facilities, resembling enormous living vats where symbiotic bacteria break down cellulose and extract nutrient from plant matter, allow the creature to derive maximum nutritional value from vegetation that would be largely indigestible to animals with less sophisticated digestive adaptations. The entire process is remarkably efficient, converting the abundant plant life of the Cretaceous world into the energy required to sustain one of the largest animals ever to walk the earth. As you observe this prehistoric feeding behavior, the sounds of other giants beginning their afternoon meals create a peaceful symphony across the valley. Perhaps half a kilometer away, a small herd of Apatosaurus has emerged from their midday resting place near the wetlands and begun feeding on the aquatic vegetation that grows in the shallow waters along the marsh edges. Their feeding strategy differs slightly from that of their Brontosaurus cousins, as they wade into the water where they can access soft, nutrient-rich plants that grow submerged or partially submerged in the fertile mud of the marsh environment. The Apatosaurus move through the wetland with surprising grace despite their enormous size, their broad feet distributing their weight so effectively that they barely sink into the soft sediments beneath the shallow water. As they feed, they create gentle waves that spread across the surface of the marsh, catching the afternoon light in patterns that add visual beauty to the already peaceful scene. The sounds of their feeding include the soft splashing of water displacement and the rhythmic tearing of aquatic vegetation, punctuated by the occasional satisfied rumbles that indicate their contentment with the quality and abundance of their meal. The social dynamics of feeding behavior reveal themselves as you continue to observe these magnificent creatures going about their afternoon sustenance activities. The Apatosaurus herd demonstrates clear evidence of cooperative feeding strategies, with different individuals focusing on different types of vegetation and different areas of the marsh to minimize competition while maximizing the efficient utilization of available resources. The largest individuals, presumably the senior matriarchs of the group, claim access to the choicest feeding spots, while the younger members of the herd learn proper feeding techniques through careful observation and imitation. Communication during feeding periods occurs primarily through low-frequency vocalizations that travel efficiently through both air and water, allowing herd members to maintain contact even when spread across large areas during their feeding activities. These calls serve multiple purposes, including coordination of group movements, warning of any potential hazards, and simple social bonding that reinforces the relationships crucial for herd cohesion and mutual protection. In a different area of the valley, a family group of Triceratops demonstrates yet another approach to afternoon feeding, their powerful builds and specialized feeding apparatus allowing them to process vegetation that would be inaccessible or indigestible to other herbivorous species. These heavily built dinosaurs focus their attention on the tougher, more fibrous plant materials, including the stems and lower portions of tree ferns that other species typically ignore. Their powerful beaks and specialized dental batteries work like living hedge trimmers, reducing tough plant matter to manageable pieces that can be efficiently processed by their robust digestive systems. The Triceratops' feeding behavior is characterized by systematic thoroughness, with each individual methodically working through a selected area and consuming virtually all available plant material before moving on to the next location. This comprehensive harvesting strategy allows them to extract maximum nutritional value from their environment, while also performing a kind of natural landscaping that creates open areas where different types of vegetation can establish themselves and grow. The afternoon light creates ideal conditions for observing the intricate details of dinosaur feeding behavior, as the golden illumination highlights the complex movements of jaws, necks, and entire bodies as these creatures pursue their essential daily nutrition. The efficiency of their feeding adaptations becomes particularly apparent during these extended observation periods, as you witness the remarkable speed with which enormous quantities of vegetation disappear into the seemingly bottomless appetites of creatures whose size demands constant fuel input to maintain their metabolic processes. Smaller herbivorous dinosaurs also contribute to the afternoon feeding symphony, their activities creating a different scale of sound and movement that adds complexity and interest to the overall scene. A group of Parasaurolophus moves through a meadow of low-growing ferns and early flowering plants, their duck-billed heads sweeping back and forth as they harvest vegetation with the efficiency of biological lawnmowers. Their feeding technique involves a rapid chopping motion that allows them to process large quantities of relatively small plant material, an adaptation that permits them to exploit food sources that are too small-scale to interest the giant sauropods. The musical calls for which Parasaurolophus are famous become part of the feeding process, as individual animals use their distinctive vocalizations to maintain contact with herd members while their attention is focused on the demanding task of gathering sufficient nutrition. These calls create a hauntingly beautiful backdrop to their feeding activities, with different individuals producing slightly different tones that blend together into natural harmonies that seem to celebrate the abundance and beauty of their prehistoric world. The vegetation itself responds to this intensive grazing pressure with adaptations that have evolved over millions of years of coexistence with large herbivorous dinosaurs. Many plant species demonstrate remarkable resilience and rapid regrowth capabilities that allow them to recover quickly from even heavy browsing, while others have developed defensive strategies such as thick bark, tough fibers, or chemical compounds that make them less palatable to all but the most specialized feeders. The relationship between the great herbivores and their plant food sources represents one of evolution's most successful partnerships, with each group of organisms shaping the evolution and adaptation of the other through millions of years of mutual interaction. The abundant vegetation of the Cretaceous world exists partly because of the fertilization and seed dispersal services provided by the dinosaurs, while the dinosaurs have achieved their remarkable size partly because of the reliable food sources provided by the diverse and productive plant communities they help to maintain. As the afternoon feeding period progresses, the landscape itself begins to show the effects of sustained dinosaur activity, with certain areas showing clear signs of recent browsing, while other locations remain relatively untouched due to the selective feeding preferences of different species. This mosaic pattern of utilization creates a complex and dynamic ecosystem where different areas are at different stages of vegetation recovery and regrowth, providing diverse habitat conditions that support the incredible biodiversity characteristic of this prehistoric world. The thermal environment during afternoon feeding hours provides ideal conditions for sustained activity, as the moderating temperatures allow the great dinosaurs to maintain efficient metabolic function without the thermal stress that characterizes the hottest part of the day. The slightly cooler air also carries scents more effectively, allowing the animals to use their sense of smell to locate the choicest vegetation and to monitor their environment for any changes that might affect their feeding activities. Water continues to play a crucial role during feeding periods, as the high moisture content of Cretaceous vegetation provides much of the hydration required by these enormous animals, while the proximity of streams and wetlands ensures that additional water is always available when needed. The integration of feeding and drinking activities creates efficient behavioral patterns that minimize energy expenditure while maximizing resource acquisition. The peaceful nature of these feeding sessions reflects the remarkable stability and abundance that characterizes life in the Cretaceous world, where the warm climate and high atmospheric carbon dioxide levels support plant communities of unprecedented productivity and diversity. This abundance allows for the relaxed, unhurried feeding behaviors you observe, as there is no desperate competition for scarce resources, no urgent pressure to consume food as quickly as possible before it disappears. Instead, the gentle giants of this ancient world feed with the calm confidence of creatures living in perfect harmony with an environment designed to support their needs, their massive appetites balanced against the incredible productivity of plant communities that have evolved specifically to coexist with and benefit from the activities of these remarkable herbivorous giants. The afternoon feeding period represents life at its most peaceful and sustainable, a demonstration of how evolution can create relationships of mutual benefit that persist for millions of years in stable, abundant ecosystems. As the afternoon sun begins its leisurely descent toward the western horizon, painting the Cretaceous sky in gentle shades of gold and amber, a subtle shift in behavior begins to ripple through the dinosaur communities scattered across this prehistoric paradise. The concentrated feeding activities of the earlier afternoon gradually give way to something more exploratory and social in nature, as various herds and family groups begin the slow, meandering movements that will characterize the remainder of their day. These afternoon wanderings represent more than simple locomotion from one place to another. They're complex social and ecological phenomena that serve multiple purposes in the daily lives of these magnificent creatures. Picture the great Brontosaurus as it lifts its massive head from the cluster of tree ferns where it has been feeding with such peaceful concentration. There's a subtle change in the creature's demeanor, a shift from the inward focus of feeding to a broader awareness of its surroundings and the social needs that extend beyond simple nutrition. The enormous neck begins to sway gently from side to side, not in search of food, but as part of a sensory survey that takes in visual, auditory, and chemical information about the current state of its territory and the location and activities of other members of its kind. The decision to begin moving appears to be made collectively rather than by any single individual, as several Brontosaurus scattered across different parts of the valley begin to show similar signs of restlessness and social awareness at approximately the same time. This synchronization suggests a level of communication and coordination that extends far beyond simple coincidence, indicating that these giants maintain contact across vast distances through methods that are still not fully understood by modern science. As the first Brontosaurus begins to move, its initial steps are taken with the same deliberate care that characterizes all aspects of its behavior, each foot carefully placed to ensure stable support for the enormous weight it must bear. The creature's movement creates a gentle rhythm that seems to pulse through the landscape itself, as if the very earth is participating in this prehistoric dance of migration and social connection. The soft thuds of massive feet contacting the ground carry for kilometers in every direction, creating a natural percussion that serves as both announcement and invitation to other members of the species. The path chosen by the wandering giant is not random, but follows well-established routes that have been used by countless generations of Brontosaurus over thousands of years. These ancient highways are marked not by any visible signs, but by subtle changes in vegetation, soil composition, and topography that result from the passage of enormous animals over extended periods of time. The routes connect essential resources like feeding areas, water sources, and seasonal gathering places, creating a network of travel corridors that facilitates both individual survival and species-wide social coordination. As you follow the gentle giant's progress across the landscape, other species begin to demonstrate their own patterns of afternoon movement, each group following behavioral programs that have been refined through millions of years of evolutionary adaptation to the rhythms and requirements of life in this ancient world. A family group of Triceratops emerges from the grove where they have spent their midday rest and begins a stately procession toward a distant hillside where the changing angle of the afternoon sun has created ideal thermal conditions for their next period of activity. The Triceratops move as a coordinated unit, with the largest adults positioned at the front and rear of the group while the younger members travel safely in the protected center of the formation. Their movement is unhurried but purposeful, each step taken with the confidence of animals that know their territory intimately and understand exactly where they are going and why. The sound of their passage is distinctly different from that of the sauropods, characterized by a more staccato rhythm that reflects their shorter, more powerful legs and their different approach to locomotion. The afternoon wanderings serve multiple social functions that become apparent as you observe the interactions between different groups and individuals during their travels. When two herds of the same species encounter each other along these ancient pathways, elaborate greeting rituals unfold that serve to establish or reconfirm social relationships, exchange information about resource availability and territory conditions, and maintain the complex network of associations that binds individuals and groups together across vast geographic areas. A particularly fascinating example of these social interactions occurs when a small group of Parasaurolophus encounters a larger herd of the same species near the confluence of two well-traveled paths. The initial contact is announced through the musical calls that are the signature of this species, with different individuals producing distinct tones that serve as acoustic signatures identifying their age, sex, social status, and emotional state. The calls echo across the valley in complex patterns that seem almost like prehistoric music, creating harmonies and counterpoints that suggest a level of acoustic sophistication that rivals the most advanced modern animal communication systems. The social dynamics revealed during these encounters demonstrate remarkable complexity and sophistication, with clear evidence of individual recognition, hierarchical relationships, and long-term social memories that allow animals to remember and respond appropriately to individuals they may not have encountered for months or even years. Young animals are introduced to new individuals through carefully orchestrated interactions that ensure proper socialization while minimizing stress and potential conflict. The landscape itself seems designed to facilitate these afternoon wanderings, with natural corridors that provide easy passage for even the largest dinosaurs while offering multiple options for animals that might need to avoid areas already occupied by other groups. The topography creates a natural network of valleys, ridges, and plateaus that serve different functions in the daily lives of various species, with some areas preferred for feeding, others for resting, and still others serving as neutral zones where different species can interact peacefully. The smaller theropod dinosaurs that share this ecosystem have their own patterns of afternoon movement that complement rather than conflict with those of their herbivorous neighbors. Several specimens can be observed moving through the landscape with the alert, purposeful gait of active predators. Yet their behavior suggests hunting strategies that focus on smaller prey rather than any attempt to threaten the massive herbivores that dominate the visible fauna. These carnivores seem to time their activities to take advantage of the disturbances created by the movements of larger animals, following the herds at respectful distances to capture small animals that are flushed from cover by the passage of the giants. The afternoon light creates ideal conditions for observing the subtle details of dinosaur locomotion and social behavior, as the golden illumination highlights the graceful movements of necks and tails, the coordinated stepping of multiple legs, and the complex body language that serves as a crucial component of dinosaur communication. The way a Brontosaurus holds its neck, the position of a Triceratops' tail, and the angle of a Parasaurolophus crest all convey specific information about the animal's emotional state, intentions, and social relationships. The wandering behaviors also serve important ecological functions that extend far beyond the immediate needs of the individual animals involved. As the great herds move across the landscape, they transport seeds, spores, and other biological material from one area to another, serving as living dispersal agents that help maintain the genetic diversity and geographic distribution of plant communities. Their movements also create disturbances that benefit certain plant species, while creating opportunities for new colonization and succession in areas that have been heavily grazed or trampled. The timing of these afternoon wanderings appears to be synchronized with subtle environmental cues that include not only the position of the sun and the ambient temperature, but also more complex factors such as barometric pressure, humidity levels, and possibly even electromagnetic fields that provide information about weather patterns and seasonal changes. This sensitivity to environmental conditions allows the dinosaurs to optimize their activities and movements to take advantage of favorable conditions while avoiding potential problems. Water sources continue to play crucial roles in determining the patterns of afternoon movement, as the wandering herds time their travels to ensure access to fresh water at appropriate intervals. The network of streams, rivers, and wetlands that characterizes this Cretaceous landscape provides both destinations and waypoints for traveling groups, while also serving as natural meeting places where different herds and species can interact peacefully. The social learning that occurs during these afternoon wanderings represents one of the most important educational processes in dinosaur society, as young animals learn to navigate their complex environment through direct experience and observation of their elders. The routes, timing, social protocols, and environmental awareness that are essential for successful survival are transmitted from generation to generation through these shared travel experiences, creating cultural traditions that persist for thousands of years. As different groups converge on and disperse from various gathering points throughout the afternoon, the landscape takes on the character of a vast, slow-motion social network where information, genes, and cultural knowledge are exchanged through the patient processes of meeting, interaction, and separation that have characterized dinosaur society for millions of years. The wanderings serve as the circulatory system of this social organism, ensuring that isolated groups remain connected to the larger community and that innovations and adaptations can spread throughout the entire population. The gentle pace of these movements reflects the abundance and stability that characterizes life in the Cretaceous world, where the pressure to move quickly or efficiently is minimized by the ready availability of resources and the relative absence of environmental threats. The dinosaurs can afford to wander slowly and socially because their world provides them with the luxury of time and the security of abundance. The afternoon wanderings also serve as a form of territorial maintenance, as the movements of large herds serve to mark and claim territory through scent, visual presence, and the physical modifications to the landscape that result from their passage. These territorial claims are generally respected by other groups, creating a dynamic but stable system of land use that minimizes conflict while ensuring that all groups have access to the resources they need for survival. The sensory experiences associated with these wanderings are remarkably rich and complex, as the moving animals create and respond to a constant stream of visual, auditory, chemical, and tactile information that guides their navigation and social interactions. The ability to process and respond appropriately to this information represents one of the most sophisticated aspects of dinosaur behavior, requiring cognitive abilities that suggest these creatures were far more intelligent and socially complex than early scientific theory suggested. As the afternoon progresses and the wandering groups continue their peaceful journeys across the prehistoric landscape, the sense of harmony and purpose that characterizes their movements creates a profound impression of life lived in perfect synchronization with natural rhythms and environmental conditions. These are not aimless wanderings, but purposeful journeys that serve essential biological and social functions, while demonstrating the remarkable sophistication of the behavioral adaptations that allowed dinosaurs to dominate terrestrial ecosystems for over 160 million years. As the golden afternoon light begins to deepen into the warmer, more amber tones that herald the approach of evening in this prehistoric paradise, the scattered wandering groups of dinosaurs that have been moving peacefully across the landscape throughout the day begin to converge toward specific locations that serve as traditional gathering places for their communities. These evening assemblies represent one of the most remarkable and complex social phenomena in the dinosaur world, bringing together individuals and families that may have been separated by many kilometers during their daily activities, creating temporary communities that can number in the hundreds or even thousands of individuals. Picture yourself positioned on a low hill overlooking one of these ancient gathering places, a broad meadow situated at the confluence of two streams where the abundant water supply and rich vegetation have attracted dinosaur communities for countless generations. The site shows clear evidence of long-term use, with the vegetation patterns modified by centuries of repeated visits from massive herbivores, creating a natural amphitheater where different species can congregate while maintaining the social distances and territorial boundaries that ensure peaceful coexistence. The first arrivals at the evening gathering are typically the Parasaurolophus herds, whose musical communication system makes them particularly well-suited to coordinate large-scale social events. As the leading members of the first group crest the ridge that overlooks the gathering meadow, their distinctive calls ring out across the valley in complex harmonies that serve multiple functions simultaneously. These vocalizations announce their arrival to any groups already present, communicate information about the size and composition of their herd, and establish the acoustic foundation for the elaborate social interactions that will unfold throughout the evening hours. The response to these initial calls comes from multiple directions, as other Parasaurolophus groups scattered across the surrounding landscape add their voices to the growing chorus. The result is a natural symphony of remarkable complexity and beauty, with different herds contributing their own harmonic themes while maintaining the overall musical structure that allows for effective communication across the vast distances involved. The acoustic environment becomes so rich and layered that individual calls merge into flowing musical passages that seem to celebrate the very joy of social connection and community gathering. As you listen to this prehistoric concert, the visual spectacle of the gathering begins to unfold as groups of various dinosaur species emerge from different approach routes and take their positions within the meadow according to social protocols that have been established over millions of years of evolutionary refinement. The Parasaurolophus groups arrange themselves in loose formations that allow for maximum acoustic communication while maintaining clear sight lines between different family units and age groups. The arrival of the massive sauropods creates a dramatic shift in both the visual and acoustic character of the gathering, as several Brontosaurus and Apatosaurus individuals begin to appear along the forest edges that border the meadow. These gentle giants approach the gathering place with their characteristic unhurried dignity, their massive forms creating moving landmarks that serve as focal points for the organization of the entire assembly. The deep, resonant calls they produce to announce their presence add bass notes to the ongoing Parasaurolophus symphony, creating harmonic foundations that enrich and deepen the overall musical experience. The social dynamics that govern these evening gatherings reveal themselves through carefully choreographed interactions that demonstrate remarkable sophistication in dinosaur community organization. Established hierarchies based on age, size, and social status determine the positioning of different individuals and groups within the gathering space, while complex greeting rituals serve to re-establish relationships and exchange crucial information about territory conditions, resource availability, and potential threats or opportunities. Young dinosaurs play particularly important roles in these gatherings, as the evening assemblies provide crucial opportunities for socialization with peers from other family groups and exposure to the broader community beyond their immediate relatives. Juvenile Parasaurolophus can be observed engaging in playful interactions that serve both recreational and educational functions, practicing the communication skills and social behaviors they will need as adults while forming the early friendships and alliances that may prove crucial throughout their lives. The play behaviors exhibited by young dinosaurs during these gatherings provide fascinating insights into the cognitive and social capabilities of these ancient creatures. Groups of juveniles engage in complex games that involve elements of chase, coordination, and competition, demonstrating learning abilities and social intelligence that rival those of modern mammals. Their activities are closely monitored by attentive adults who intervene when necessary to prevent conflicts or injuries, while generally allowing the youngsters considerable freedom to explore and experiment with social relationships. The arrival of Triceratops family groups adds another dimension to the gathering, as these heavily armored herbivores demonstrate their own distinctive social behaviors and territorial preferences. They typically position themselves somewhat apart from the other species, creating their own subgatherings within the larger assembly where they can engage in the head-to-head displays and gentle sparring matches that serve important functions in establishing and maintaining social relationships within their communities. The Triceratops displays are particularly impressive to observe, as individuals face each other with their massive three-horned skulls lowered and engage in carefully controlled pushing contests that test strength and endurance, while rarely resulting in actual injury. These ritualized competitions serve multiple purposes, including the establishment of dominance hierarchies, the practice of defensive skills, and the reinforcement of social bonds through shared physical activities. As the evening progresses and more groups continue to arrive at the gathering place, the complexity of social interactions increases exponentially, creating a dynamic network of communication and relationship management that spans multiple species and hundreds of individual animals. The acoustic environment becomes increasingly rich as different species add their distinctive vocalizations to the mix, creating a multi-layered soundscape that includes everything from the musical calls of Parasaurolophus to the deep rumbles of sauropods and the shorter, sharper communications of various smaller dinosaur species. The chemical communication that occurs during these gatherings is equally complex and important, though far less obvious to human observers. Dinosaurs possess sophisticated scent detection capabilities that allow them to gather detailed information about the health, reproductive status, emotional state, and individual identity of other community members through chemical cues that are constantly exchanged during social interactions. The gathering place becomes saturated with these chemical messages, creating an information-rich environment that facilitates complex social coordination and decision-making. The evening light creates ideal conditions for observing the subtle details of dinosaur social behavior, as the warm, golden illumination highlights the nuanced body language and positioning that convey crucial information about relationships, intentions, and emotional states. The way individuals orient themselves relative to others, the positioning of heads and tails, and the timing and intensity of various displays all contribute to a complex communication system that operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Water sources within the gathering area serve important social functions beyond simple hydration, as the streams and small ponds become focal points for interspecies interactions and neutral zones where different groups can approach each other without the territorial tensions that might arise in other contexts. The sound of flowing water also provides a natural acoustic backdrop that may help to facilitate communication by masking potentially alarming sounds and creating a peaceful atmosphere that encourages relaxed social interaction. The feeding behaviors that occur during evening gatherings are markedly different from those observed during the focused afternoon feeding sessions, taking on a more social and leisurely character that reflects the primary emphasis on community interaction rather than simple nutrition. Animals may graze casually while maintaining their attention on social activities, or they may share particularly choice food sources in displays of cooperation and mutual tolerance that strengthen community bonds. The presence of smaller theropod dinosaurs during these gatherings demonstrates the remarkably peaceful nature of these social events, as even potential predators are tolerated within the assembly as long as they respect the implicit boundaries and behavioral protocols that govern these community gatherings. The predators seem to understand that evening gatherings represent neutral social time, when hunting activities are suspended in favor of the more complex social needs that transcend simple predator-prey relationships. The territorial negotiations that occur during these gatherings serve crucial functions in maintaining the stability and organization of dinosaur communities across the broader landscape. Information about resource availability, territory boundaries, and population changes is exchanged through complex social interactions that allow for the peaceful resolution of potential conflicts and the coordination of community activities across vast geographic areas. As darkness begins to approach and the evening gathering reaches its peak intensity, the social energy of the assembly creates an almost palpable sense of community and connection that transcends individual survival needs and speaks to the deep social nature of these remarkable creatures. The gathering represents more than simple resource sharing or information exchange. It embodies the fundamental social bonds that hold dinosaur communities together and provide the foundation for their long-term survival and success. The gradual transition from day to evening that occurs during these gatherings serves as a natural timing mechanism that coordinates the complex social activities and ensures that all necessary community functions are completed before the onset of night brings different behavioral requirements and social priorities. The changing light conditions create subtle cues that help regulate the timing and intensity of various social interactions, ensuring that the gathering unfolds in an orderly and productive manner. The evening gatherings represent one of the most sophisticated expressions of social behavior in the dinosaur world, demonstrating cognitive capabilities and community organization skills that reveal these ancient creatures to be far more complex and intelligent than early scientific theory suggested. The ability to coordinate such large-scale social events across multiple species and maintain peaceful interactions among hundreds of individuals speaks to evolutionary adaptations that prioritize cooperation and community benefit over simple individual survival. The memories and relationships formed during these evening gatherings create lasting social networks that influence dinosaur behavior and community organization throughout the year, establishing the foundation for successful cooperation during times of environmental stress, coordinated responses to threats, and the efficient sharing of resources and information that allows these communities to thrive in their ancient world. As the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky above this prehistoric social gathering, the sense of timeless community and peaceful coexistence that characterizes these evening assemblies provides a profound reminder of the sophisticated social capabilities that allowed dinosaurs to maintain stable, successful communities for over 160 million years of Earth's history. As the sun continues its gentle descent toward the western horizon, painting the ancient sky in ever-deepening shades of amber and rose, the energy of the evening gatherings begins to transform into something quieter and more contemplative. The boisterous social interactions and complex communications that characterize the peak hours of community assembly gradually give way to a more subdued atmosphere as the various dinosaur groups prepare for the transition from day to night. This period of twilight calm represents one of the most peaceful and reflective times in the daily cycle of these prehistoric communities, a time when the urgent activities of feeding, wandering, and socializing yield to the gentler rhythms of settling and preparation for rest. Picture the gradual transformation that occurs across the gathering meadow as the changing light signals the approach of evening's end. The intense social energy that had brought hundreds of individuals together in complex patterns of communication and interaction begins to dissipate like morning mist, replaced by a softer, more introspective mood that reflects the universal need for quiet preparation before the vulnerable hours of sleep. The acoustic environment, which had been filled with the musical calls of Parasaurolophus, the deep rumbles of sauropods, and the varied vocalizations of dozens of other species, gradually simplifies into a more subdued symphony of gentle contact calls and soft breathing. The Parasaurolophus herds, which had served as the acoustic directors of the evening social orchestra, begin to modulate their vocalizations into softer, more intimate tones that serve to maintain group cohesion while acknowledging the changing needs of the approaching night. Their calls become less frequent, but more musical, taking on an almost lullaby-like quality that seems designed to promote relaxation and peaceful transition into the slower rhythms that will characterize the nighttime hours. The haunting beauty of these twilight songs creates an atmosphere of profound tranquility that spreads throughout the entire gathering area. The massive sauropods demonstrate their own distinctive adaptations to the Twilight period through subtle changes in posture and positioning that reflect their preparation for the extended period of reduced activity that lies ahead. The great Brontosaurus individuals that had dominated the visual landscape of the gathering begin to arrange themselves in comfortable resting formations, their enormous necks curving into graceful S shapes that allow for relaxed positioning while maintaining the ability to raise their heads quickly if necessary. The process of settling into these positions occurs with the same deliberate care that characterizes all sauropod movements. Each adjustment carefully considered and executed with the fluid grace of creatures perfectly adapted to their enormous size. As you observe these gentle giants preparing for rest, the remarkable social coordination that governs their nighttime arrangements becomes apparent through the careful positioning of individuals relative to each other and to the surrounding terrain. Family groups cluster together in formations that provide mutual protection and comfort, while maintaining sight lines and escape routes that could prove crucial if threats should appear during the vulnerable hours of darkness. The largest individuals position themselves at the perimeters of these family clusters, where their size and defensive capabilities can provide maximum protection for the smaller and more vulnerable members of their groups. The Triceratops families demonstrate their own approach to twilight preparation through the formation of defensive circles that showcase the sophisticated social organization that has allowed these heavily armored herbivores to thrive in a world populated by formidable predators. The adults arrange themselves with their heads facing outward and their young safely positioned in the protected center of the formation, creating a living fortress of bone and horn that would challenge even the largest and most determined carnivores. The sight of these magnificent creatures settling into their protective formations provide a powerful reminder of the constant vigilance required for survival in the ancient world, even during the most peaceful periods of daily life. The smaller herbivorous dinosaurs that had participated in the evening gathering begin their own preparations for night through behaviors that reflect their different survival strategies and social needs. Groups of Hypsilophodon and other small ornithopods gather in dense clusters that provide both warmth and protection through numbers, their alert postures and nervous energy reflecting the heightened vulnerability that comes with their modest size in a world dominated by giants. These smaller dinosaurs maintain higher levels of vigilance throughout the Twilight period, their survival depending more on early detection of threats and rapid escape than on the defensive capabilities and massive size that protect their larger relatives. The transition from the active social period to the quiet preparation for night creates opportunities to observe some of the most intimate and touching aspects of dinosaur family life, as parents and offspring engage in gentle bonding behaviors that strengthen the relationships crucial for survival and successful reproduction. Adult Parasaurolophus can be observed nuzzling their young with tender care, using their sensitive bills to provide comfort and reassurance as the family groups prepare for the potentially dangerous hours ahead. These displays of parental affection reveal emotional depths and social sophistication that challenge traditional views of dinosaurs as simple, instinct-driven creatures. The changing quality of light during the Twilight period creates unique visual conditions that enhance the sense of peace and tranquility that characterizes this time of day. The harsh brightness of midday sun gives way to a softer, more diffused illumination that seems to wrap around objects rather than creating sharp shadows, lending a dreamlike quality to the entire landscape. This gentle lighting highlights the subtle textures and colors of dinosaur skin and the graceful curves of their bodies in ways that emphasize their beauty and majesty while minimizing the potentially threatening aspects of their enormous size and power. The temperature begins to drop noticeably as the sun approaches the horizon, creating the first hints of the thermal conditions that will characterize the nighttime hours. The great dinosaurs respond to this cooling with subtle behavioral adjustments that demonstrate their sophisticated understanding of thermal regulation and energy conservation. Many individuals begin to seek out positions that will provide optimal thermal conditions throughout the night, including locations with good southern exposure for morning warming, protection from cooling breezes, in proximity to thermal masses like large rocks or dense vegetation that will release stored heat throughout the night. The acoustic environment of Twilight takes on its own distinctive character as the complex social vocalizations of the evening gathering period give way to the simpler, more functionally focused sounds of preparation and settling. The calls that continue to be heard serve primarily maintenance functions, helping family groups maintain contact and coordination as they arrange themselves for rest, rather than the complex social and territorial communications that dominated the earlier evening hours. These twilight sounds are gentler and more musical than the urgent communications of active periods, creating a natural soundtrack that promotes relaxation and peaceful transition into night. The behavioral changes that occur during twilight reflect not only immediate preparation for rest, but also the activation of neural and physiological processes that will govern the nighttime period. Dinosaur brains begin to shift into the altered states of consciousness that characterize sleep and rest periods, with changes in alertness, sensory processing, and social responsiveness that prepare these creatures for the different demands and opportunities of the nighttime hours. The transition is gradual and peaceful, allowing for careful preparation and positioning before full rest begins. Small theropod dinosaurs that had maintained respectful distances during the active social periods of the evening gathering begin to withdraw entirely as twilight deepens, recognizing that their presence becomes less welcome as the herbivorous species prepare for their most vulnerable period. These predators demonstrate their own sophisticated understanding of the social protocols that govern interspecies relationships, timing their departure to avoid creating unnecessary stress or alarm among the settling herbivore communities. The plant life of the ancient landscape also responds to the changing conditions of twilight through subtle adjustments in posture and orientation that reflect their own daily rhythms and physiological cycles. Many flowering plants begin to close their blooms as light levels decrease, while others prepare to open night-blooming flowers that will take advantage of nocturnal pollinators. The tree ferns adjust the angles of their fronds to optimize dew collection and minimize heat loss, while the great conifers begin to release the distinctive resinous scents that will help protect them from nighttime herbivory and insect damage. The streams and water sources that had served as focal points for social interaction during the active periods of the gathering begin to take on different roles as twilight progresses, becoming primarily functional resources for final drinking and cooling before the night's rest begins. The sounds of gentle splashing and contented drinking create peaceful background notes that contribute to the overall atmosphere of preparation and settling that characterizes this transitional period. The social hierarchies and territorial arrangements that have been established during the active phases of the evening gathering now serve new functions as organizational frameworks for the night ahead. The positioning and spacing of different groups reflect careful consideration of protection needs, thermal requirements, and social comfort, creating a complex, three-dimensional arrangement that maximizes safety and well-being for all participants while maintaining the social bonds and relationships that are crucial for community survival. The gradual reduction in activity levels and social interaction that occurs during twilight allows for increased attention to individual needs and family relationships, as the broader community focus of the gathering period gives way to the more intimate concerns of immediate family and personal preparation. This shift in focus creates opportunities for the kind of quiet bonding and individual care that strengthens the social fabric of dinosaur communities while providing emotional comfort and security during the transition to night. The sky itself becomes an increasingly important part of the twilight experience as the first stars begin to appear in the deepening blue-black vault above the ancient landscape. These celestial markers serve as natural timing cues that help coordinate the behavioral transitions occurring throughout the dinosaur community, providing universal signals that transcend species boundaries and ensure that all members of the community make appropriate preparations for the night ahead. The peaceful nature of twilight calm reflects the remarkable stability and security that characterizes life in this Cretaceous paradise, where abundant resources and stable environmental conditions allow for the luxury of gradual, relaxed transitions between different phases of daily life. The absence of immediate survival pressures creates space for the development of sophisticated social behaviors and peaceful community interactions that demonstrate the remarkable evolutionary achievements of these ancient creatures. As darkness continues to deepen and the twilight period approaches its end, the sense of peaceful preparation and community security that has characterized this transitional time creates a profound atmosphere of tranquility and safety that will carry the dinosaur communities through the quiet hours ahead, ensuring that they awaken refreshed and ready for another day of peaceful life in their prehistoric paradise. As the last traces of twilight fade from the western horizon and the ancient sky deepens into the profound darkness of a Cretaceous night, the prehistoric landscape transforms into a realm of gentle shadows and peaceful rest, with the magnificent dinosaur communities that have filled the day with their activities now settle into the quiet rhythms of sleep and recovery. This final chapter of our peaceful day in the land of the dinosaurs brings us into the most intimate and vulnerable period of these creatures' lives, when the giants that rule the daylight world surrender themselves to the restorative embrace of night, trusting in their social bonds, defensive strategies, and the fundamental safety of their abundant world to protect them through the dark hours ahead. Picture the gathering meadow now, cloaked in starlight. Its familiar daytime landmarks transformed by darkness into a softer, more mysterious landscape, where the massive forms of sleeping dinosaurs create new topographical features that rise and fall with the slow rhythm of their breathing. The temperature has dropped to a comfortable 20 degrees Celsius, creating ideal conditions for rest and recovery, while the humid air carries the mingled sense of cooling vegetation and the peaceful exhalations of hundreds of resting creatures who have found safety and comfort in their community gathering. The great sauropods have achieved their final resting positions with the same deliberate care that characterizes all their movements, their enormous bodies settling into comfortable depressions in the soft earth where they can maintain thermal comfort throughout the night while preserving their ability to rise quickly if circumstances should require it. The Brontosaurus family groups have arranged themselves in loose clusters that provide mutual protection while allowing each individual adequate space for comfortable rest. Their long necks, curved in graceful arcs that bring their heads close to the ground where they can detect vibrations and scents that might signal the approach of any nighttime threats. The breathing of these sleeping giants creates a profound and soothing rhythm that dominates the acoustic environment of the night, as the slow, deep respirations of creatures weighing dozens of tons combine to produce a natural symphony of peace and contentment. Each breath represents the circulation of enormous volumes of air through lung systems designed to support metabolisms of incredible scale, creating gentle whooshing sounds that speak to the remarkable physiological achievements that allow such massive animals to thrive on land. The Triceratops families have maintained their defensive formations throughout the transition to night, their protective circles of horned heads and armored bodies creating secure sanctuaries where their young can rest in complete safety while the adults maintain vigilant watch through rotating periods of alertness and rest. These magnificent creatures demonstrate remarkable discipline in their nocturnal organization, with individual adults taking turns maintaining watchfulness while their companions enjoy deeper periods of restorative sleep. The smaller herbivorous dinosaurs have clustered together in dense aggregations that provide both warmth and protection through the simple strategy of numbers and mutual vigilance. Groups of Parasaurolophus have formed sleeping huddles where dozens of individuals rest together in close physical contact, their distinctive crested heads creating forest-like arrangements that rise and fall with the gentle movements of sleep. The soft contact calls that occasionally pass between these sleeping creatures serve to maintain group cohesion and provide reassurance that all members of the community remain safe and accounted for. The night sounds of this prehistoric world are fundamentally different from the complex social communications and feeding activities that characterize the daylight hours, dominated instead by the peaceful rhythms of rest and the subtle sounds of a community at peace. The gentle breathing of sleeping giants mingles with the soft rustling of vegetation moved by night breezes, the distant calls of nocturnal creatures that pursue their own life cycles in the darkness, and the ever-present murmur of streams and water sources that continue their patient flow regardless of the activities of the creatures they support. The stars that illuminate this ancient night sky shine with a clarity and brilliance that surpasses anything visible in the modern world, their light unfiltered by atmospheric pollution or artificial illumination. These celestial beacons provide enough illumination to reveal the peaceful landscape in soft, silver tones that highlight the graceful curves of sleeping dinosaurs and the gentle undulations of the terrain they occupy. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens in a glorious arc that would have been clearly visible to any dinosaur with the inclination to gaze upward, though their attention remains focused on the terrestrial concerns of safety, comfort, and community well-being. The nocturnal ecosystem that emerges during the dark hours reveals itself through subtle signs and sounds that speak to the remarkable diversity of life forms that share this ancient world with the giant dinosaurs. Small mammals venture forth from their daytime hiding places to pursue their own feeding and social activities, their tiny forms moving through the landscape with the quick, nervous energy of creatures that must accomplish their essential activities during the brief hours when larger predators are less active. Early birds, the descendants of small theropod dinosaurs that have begun the evolutionary journey toward the aerial mastery that will characterize their lineage, add their own contributions to the night soundscape through soft calls and gentle movements among the trees and vegetation. These primitive avians demonstrate behavioral patterns that bridge the gap between their reptilian ancestry and their feathered future, roosting in the safety of dense vegetation while maintaining the alertness necessary for survival in a world still dominated by their larger dinosaurian relatives. The insects that play such crucial roles in the ecosystem of this ancient world continue their activities throughout the night, their quiet buzzings and chirpings creating a subtle background texture that speaks to the incredible diversity and abundance of arthropod life during the Cretaceous period. These tiny creatures serve essential functions as pollinators, decomposers, and food sources for other animals, their activities helping to maintain the biological productivity that supports the massive herbivores and the communities they create. The plant life of the night reveals its own distinctive characteristics and adaptations as darkness settles over the landscape. Night-blooming flowers begin to open their petals to attract nocturnal pollinators, releasing fragrances that add sweet and exotic notes to the nighttime air. The great tree ferns adjust their fronds to optimal positions for collecting the moisture that will condense from the humid air as temperatures continue to drop, while the towering conifers release subtle chemical signals that help coordinate their defensive responses to potential herbivory and pathogen threats. The physiological processes that occur during dinosaur sleep represent some of the most fascinating and poorly understood aspects of these creatures' biology, as their enormous size creates unique challenges and opportunities for rest and recovery. The thermal mass of the largest sauropods means that their body temperatures change very slowly throughout the night, providing metabolic stability that allows for efficient cellular repair and growth processes. Their sleep patterns likely involve complex cycles of different rest states that optimize both physical recovery and the maintenance of vigilance necessary for survival in a world where even sleeping giants might face threats. The social bonds that unite dinosaur communities become even more important during the vulnerable hours of night, as the physical proximity and coordinated vigilance of group living provide security that no individual animal could achieve alone. The gentle physical contact between family members, the coordinated breathing patterns that emerge within closely associated groups, and the subtle communication systems that maintain group awareness all contribute to a sense of community security that allows for deep, restorative rest. The dreams that may have visited sleeping dinosaurs during these peaceful nights remain forever mysterious, though the complex behaviors and social relationships observed during their waking hours suggest cognitive capabilities that could have supported rich inner lives and sophisticated mental experiences. The neural activity that occurred within their sleeping brains may have included processes similar to the memory consolidation and emotional processing that characterizes sleep in modern animals, helping to integrate the day's experiences and prepare for the challenges and opportunities of the coming dawn. The security systems that protect sleeping dinosaur communities operate on multiple levels, from the physical defenses provided by size, armor, and weaponry to the social defenses created by group vigilance and coordinated response capabilities. The positioning of different species and age groups within the sleeping community reflects careful consideration of optimal protection strategies, while the rotation of watch duties among adults ensures that threats can be detected and response is coordinated even during the deepest hours of night. The predatory dinosaurs that hunt during nighttime hours pursue their activities with careful respect for the defensive capabilities of the sleeping herbivore communities, focusing their attention on smaller, more vulnerable prey rather than attempting to challenge the well-organized and heavily defended gatherings. These nocturnal hunters demonstrate their own sophisticated understanding of risk assessment and energy expenditure, pursuing hunting strategies that maximize their chances of success while minimizing the potential for injury or confrontation with dangerous prey. As the night progresses through its various phases and the stars will slowly across the ancient sky, the sleeping dinosaur communities continue their peaceful rest with the confidence that comes from successful adaptation to their environment and effective social organization. The gentle sounds of their breathing create a natural meditation that speaks to the fundamental rhythms of life, while their peaceful coexistence demonstrates the remarkable social achievements that allowed these creatures to maintain stable communities for millions of years. The moisture that begins to condense from the cooling air creates the first dewdrops that will eventually coat the vegetation and provide fresh water for the morning activities of countless smaller creatures. This natural distillation process represents one of the many ways in which the physical environment of the Cretaceous world supports the biological productivity that sustains such abundant and diverse communities of large animals. The gradual cooling that continues throughout the night creates optimal conditions for the physiological processes that support growth, healing, and reproductive success in these ancient creatures, while the extended period of reduced activity allows for the energy conservation that makes their enormous size sustainable in terms of daily caloric requirements. The night represents not just a period of rest, but an essential component of the lifestyle that enables dinosaur gigantism to function successfully in terrestrial environments. The profound peace that settles over the sleeping dinosaur communities as the night reaches its deepest hours creates an atmosphere of timeless tranquility that transcends the boundaries between species and connects all the sleeping creatures in a shared experience of safety, comfort, and community well-being. This piece speaks to the fundamental success of dinosaur social evolution and the remarkable stability of the Cretaceous world that supported their magnificent communities for so many millions of years. As you drift toward your own peaceful sleep, you can imagine yourself resting among these gentle giants, surrounded by the soft sounds of their breathing and the subtle movements of a world at rest. The security and tranquility of their ancient community extends across time to offer comfort and peace in our own world, reminding us of the enduring power of social connection, mutual protection, and the simple beauty of life lived in harmony with natural rhythms. The night's embrace that enfolds these sleeping dinosaurs offers its gentle comfort to you as well, carrying you into dreams of ancient worlds and peaceful communities where giants walked the earth with grace and dignity, where social bonds transcended individual survival, and where every day ended with the quiet satisfaction of life, lived well in the company of those who share our journey through time. Sleep peacefully, knowing that the gentle giants of the ancient world have shown us that even the mightiest creatures find their greatest strength in community, and their deepest peace in the simple act of resting together under the eternal stars.